Hey everybody, and hello, my favorite badass. How are you?
I am fabulous. How's my favorite big burly ginger today?
I am good. Just back from the gym and lunch, so I'm ready to chat and go more down our crazy memory lane. And as we're getting ready to record this, I spent a lot of the morning going through old photos and old videos that I want to incorporate, and hopefully you've seen in some of the episodes leading up to this by now, to edit them in to kind of illustrate what we experienced. And I got to say, that was a lot more emotional than I thought it would be.
Yeah, as I'm going through stuff, and we know so far I have cried at least once on every episode that we have shot. I'm sure today won't be any different. Some of it with happy tears, some of it is, very sad, panic tears. But I got to tell you, recording this has thrown me right back in the moment. The sights, the smells, the feeling, like every bit of it. It is,
Yeah.
oof,
Well, it
oof.
was a major life event for you and for me, for us, that we went through and shared together. And, just happy to be on this side of it, to be able to share the story and let people know that there's a way through some insanely dark and crazy times that are not anticipated at all. Um, and, I have to say, I'm very proud to share this story too, because we are a badass team. We are Team Awesome, as we always call ourselves, and we somehow managed to figure it out, which wasn't easy. And if you're watching, we're hoping that this is helpful to you as well. And we want to hear your stories too. So be sure to share those. When we chatted last episode, we had just decided that it was time for you to move in with me, because you were convinced you were not going to get any help.
Yeah, I had just made the call to you and I said, it's time. I don't, and I'm fiercely independent. I don't like living with anybody. And I said, I think I think I have to move in with you. How do you feel about that? And you said, come on.
Well, I think we're like boomerang besties. We've kind of come back and forth to each other. As we talked about before in some of our previous conversations, we've lived with each other 3 or 4 times over the years. And it was just a natural move. And I remember preparing the house for your arrival was a whole thing, because it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to run out and get a bed. You had ordered a bed. You needed a bed that could set up. You knew that you were going to need this help. You wanted to get a specific kind of recliner that could also help you get up because you were starting to have some mobility issues. And I have always teased you about being addicted to online ordering because you order stuff all the time. I remember when I lived with you before, I'd go out the front door and there's like 6 packages of stuff. I'm like, what is she even buying? But this was all very purposeful and all very planned, which made me realize that, okay, this is not just the best friend coming to live with me again. This is up a notch.
Yeah, and I was coming from a 1,600 square foot 2 bedroom house with a big back area, a big garage, a giant laundry facility, like all this stuff. I was moving in a 10 by 10, which was good because I was so weak. I needed to be contained because I was incredibly weak. That's how I knew I needed a certain bed. I needed a certain recliner, I needed a stuff to be a certain amount of small so I would be sure I could get around it because I didn't know how steady I was going to be on my feet. It was weird. I could feel all that stuff coming. It
Hmm.
was like this internal knowing that really helped me through all of this. And now, one of the key things I do in my coaching is really talk to people about living from the inside out and listening to their own intuition,
Right.
because my intuition really guided me through some of this and put me in better situations. For it to be bad, there were some good things, and I felt like I made some good decisions along the way, and you certainly helped me with those.
And to clarify, I did not put you in a 10 by 10 cell. Your room was 10 by 10. We shared the house. So I want to make sure people
We
realize I didn't
wish,
like put you
we
out in the
wish
backyard.
I did sell. No, keeping me
So,
quarantined was a good idea. I'm kidding.
so
He,
just to
he
make
had
that
not
clear.
entered anything, people. There wasn't a lock on the outside of the door. I was free to roam. I was just too weak to do so.
Yeah, I knew you couldn't roam far, so I just wanted to clarify that. But yeah, so I remember the room that you ended up claiming as your bedroom was my office, and I had moved everything into my bedroom, which was totally fine. And the house was about 1,500 square feet, so a little bit smaller than what you had a nice sized backyard, so we had lots of room to share. But we knew that your bedroom, as always, even when you were super healthy, was always your sanctuary. You really liked having that place comfortable. That's where you like to have
Mm.
your you time and watch your movies and watch your shows. So we wanted it to be set up for that. And I remember when your bed showed up, it was just the platform, because it moved. I remember setting that up and I would send you pictures. And I think if our phones are right, it was around July 6th of 2021 that you physically moved in to the house with the stuff you could bring with you. Our friend Jess helped us with a lot of the stuff you brought in, food and collectibles and whatever we could to kind of get you settled in.
Yeah, I remember after the call to you and I knew I was going to move, the next thing I did was try to get the energy together to call Jess because she would like organize things for people. That's something she would do as a little side hustle. And so I called Jess. Hopefully, we can get her on the show. She's very busy with two new grandbabies, but um, she would organize for people, and I'm like, I'm going to need some help. And she's like, I told you, whatever you need, I'm right there. I got you. And I'm like, I'm going to move in with Steven. And I'm like, I have got to get some bags packed of just what I'm going to take. She said, what are you going to do with everything else? I said, it's got to go. Sell it, give it away. It's like I do not have any energy, any mind. It's all I can do to keep breathing.
Right.
I don't have the capacity to do sort anything, look at anything, want to keep this, want to get rid of this. But she was still good once I moved in with you. She would send me pictures. Are you sure you want to get rid of this? Are you sure you want to get rid of that? And I'm like, yes, and we let all our friends know first so they could go pick out what they wanted, before all of it. Everybody was just wonderful during that. Like lots of people pitched in. So I don't know how I would have gotten vacated from that house and in with you without her help. She was a godsend during that
Yeah, she
time.
handled everything down there. And I actually had a few things in your shed down there. And I remember my husband now and I going down there and pulling out my old stuff. I'm like, oh, here's my old Christmas tree. And here's, stuff I guess I hadn't moved in with me yet. So it was interesting to do that too and get my stuff out of the way. Just again, another example of us always having this tie of our stuff intermingling. And we joke all the time about there's probably pieces of furniture we have or other things we've had that we don't know if it's yours or mine. It's just changed possessions that many times.
Right, like the footstool that came back. I'm like, I'm so glad you're like, that started out as yours. Like, oh,
Yours
like this.
again.
It was a very funny thing.
Uh,
Another funny thing from when we were trying to get rid of my house, I will never forget this. These are the glimpses of funny that came in during a really, really difficult time. Because again, we lean towards positivity and humor and those kind of things to get us through. I remember Jessica calling me going, we have all these pool floats because everybody would bring these crazy cool pool float. Denise had a big diamond ring. We all had our specialty floats for the pool, right? Because
yeah.
it was the community. It was where our tribe went to be together. Was my pool, and she was, going through these floats and saying, "You sure about this one? You sure about that one?" And I'm thinking, I can't even get in the bathtub. I'm most certainly not getting in a pool. So yeah, they can all go. And then all of a sudden she goes, oh no, not this one. I said, what is that one? She said, Steven's poop float. Because I bought you that big poop float. Everybody knew it as your poop float.
Yep.
Um, and she's like, no, the poop float can't go. I'm like, the poop float has to go. Like, none of the
Yeah.
rest of us have a pool. The poop float needs to go. Sell them all in one big pile or let people pick and choose. And she's like, oh, I'm really sad to see the poop float go. This silly stuff to make you laugh in the toughest of times.
Yeah. And you had a ton of alcohol. I remember that we had to rehome. We had couches that were sold. I mean, there was a lot of stuff, but I remember the sense of relief that I know I felt, and I think you had too, when you came in and sat on my couch and was like, okay, this is home now. And one of the things, and I can't remember if you ordered it before you came or if it came later, um, was something that attached to the couch to help you stand up. Do you remember those things? They went under the cushions and they had like handles. Is that Okay.
Yeah, because I ordered it after I moved in
Okay.
because, I had the rail on my med bed, I call it.
Hmm.
And I had that rail and I needed that because I was so weak. This was before the paralysis. So I needed it to get up. And I'm like, I think I'm going to have trouble navigating the couch because your couch was lovely and very soft. But I'm like, I think I'm going to have trouble navigating the couch. So I looked for something that I would be able to hold on to get up
Hmm.
from the couch because I was so weak. It had nothing to do with numbness or paralysis yet, which it came in real handy for that later, but we didn't
Yes.
know it at the time. Another preemptive thing that really turned out to be something that was necessary to help me be able to just stand up because
Well,
I
and
was
I
so.
I remember being really impressed with your ability to find the things out there that you needed for specific situations. And I remember us having a conversation of saying, if there's something you need, it's out there. You just have to be able to look for it. And I remember us talking a lot about that because we both learned about different things to help you be, as you lost mobility through this, to be able to still be able to function. And we're like, oh, I had no idea this was the thing. So there was a lot
I
of that.
was just I was just talking to somebody about that the other day. I was actually coaching them and they had a problem they were dealing with. And I'm like, when you get in these situations, if you get in solution mode, you will be amazed at the stuff you figure out when you slip out of problem mode and into solution mode because there were so many genius little things and workarounds I figured out to be able to do things after the paralysis was. And a lot of that I learned in the hospital, but I figured some other stuff out on my own and just how to navigate life when something happens. And it kind of comes down to a matter of your attitude has to be right, you have to be out of problem mode and into solution mode. And you got to be like, this is what it is. I'm going to do what I can do to make it better.
Right.
Like, that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, that's what this whole journey was about for us too, is, what's the solution to this new problem we're running into? And I do know that you moved in to the house as your house was still being empty, Jess was bringing stuff you wanted and selling stuff you didn't or rehoming things. Um, but what was it like for you to come in and finally sit on that couch that was so hard for you to get out of, knowing that, like you said, you're very independent, so you had to let go of some of that independence. Luckily, we're super comfortable around each other, which I know was not a problem. But what was that moment like for you when you're like, oh, this is where I live now?
I would have thought, based on how I'm geared, that I would have been like, I can't believe that I'm here. I loved my house. You know this.
Yes.
Everybody loved my house. Um, and having to give that up was a big deal. And I would have thought that I would have been more disappointed or downtrodden about that. I was not. What I remember, and I'm going to try to say this without crying, what I can remember is I felt safe. I felt safe.
That's cry number one this episode, everybody. Just keep it
I
going.
told you today was going to be one. But yeah,
No,
I felt safe because I was so frightened.
yeah, yeah, I know you were scared to death. And I felt a sense of relief knowing that I could keep an eye on you, even though I didn't know what the hell I
Always
was doing.
that didn't have anything to do with illness. You've always felt that way. You're
That's
like, I'm
true.
just trying to
Uh,
keep an eye on you because you're always up to something.
exactly. I knew I had my hands more full this time around. But no, I had a sense of relief. I didn't have to wake up in the morning and call or text you to see how you're doing or if you're okay. I could physically see, okay, she's okay, she's not okay, whatever the situation is. So I know we both kind of felt that collective sense of relief. And I remember fast forwarding a little bit, once you got settled in, life was normal, quote unquote normal. I'm working from home. We had to figure out a system to make sure you had everything you needed so that I could actually get work done. Remember that
That was
conversation?
after I came home from the hospital. We didn't run into that till after the hospital,
Well, there was
right?
some of that beforehand too, because you were with me for 3 weeks before you went to the hospital. And I would make sure, that you had your water, that you had your pills, that you had this. I mean, you were still able to get around. So that was good. But I remember there were a couple times, and of course, when you came back from the hospital, which we'll talk about in a future episode, we really had to plan. But
I remember
it was
you're
like
like,
that.
listen,
It was like that joke, like I just sat down. What else do you need?
yes. When I can't wait till we get to that episode and I'll tell you my whole thought process with that. Oh, I was laughing on the inside. It's things you just don't realize till you're in the middle of it. And that's a beautiful thing about a really true and genuine friendship. You can tell each other whatever you need to say, and you know that it's always going to be okay because
Yeah.
no matter what it is, you're going to work your way through it
Mhm.
because it's for life,
Right.
kind of thing.
Absolutely.
You just know you're going to work your way through it. And that's part of why I felt so safe moving in. I knew you were going to take care of me. And honestly, Tim made me feel very safe as well. Him being around, he was very caring, conscientious. He was keeping an eye on me. I could feel that. I could feel that energy knowing that I was being taken care of.
And to add to that, he was taking care of me too. He would constantly remind me to get your workout in and make sure you eat right, make sure you're resting so you take care of yourself so you can better take care of her, meaning you. So, yeah, he was kind of like a caretaker for both of us at the same time while he and I were progressing our relationship along during all
Yeah,
this. So,
a long time ago to run. I don't know why he didn't, but I'm glad he stayed.
I mean, he had a front row seat, so he knew what he was getting into. So,
Oh, he did. Like when we tell people we're a set, he can attest to that. I'm sure he's got stories. I can't wait till he comes on.
he does. When
Oh,
when you came back from the hospital and were there permanently, we had a lot of dinners and a lot of time together for him to just be like, I'm going to let you two finish this conversation, and he would go do his own thing. But that's a future thing. Um,
uh,
so as we're settling in, you are still trying to figure things out, and we start taking some trips to some doctors,
we do. I made a
or
list
more
here.
trips to doctors, I should say.
My mind was all over the place and I kept forgetting. And the last episode, I also remember I couldn't remember the immunologist stuff. So I pulled those records. It was my immunoglobulin A, G, and M were more than double. One of them was triple what it should be. And that was very alarming to them. And they tested that in May. And then in June, it went up again. And they're like, it's going the wrong direction. We have no idea about this. But we saw cardio, we saw endo, we saw um, heart doctors. I got on my primary care, gave me heart meds because it was pushing pressure on my heart, pushing my blood pressure up, keeping my heart rate up all the time, which is incredibly dangerous. And they couldn't do anything for it because they couldn't figure out what was doing it. And the heart meds were barely touching it. They were doing just enough to keep my heart from exploding,
Right,
is all that was happening. Um, and then finally, we got into a rheumatologist. But before that, the really first major thing I remember happening once I got moved in, besides everybody not having an answer, not having an answer, not having an answer, was both my big toes went numb. I woke up one morning, my big toes were numb. And I told you immediately right away. And I said, I'm going to call my primary care and tell him my toes are numb. And the wild part was like 2 nights before my toes went numb, was watching TV and they were talking about COVID triggering GBS, which is a super rare disease, Guillain-Barré disease. It's super rare. And so it kind of became a news story because it was so rare.
right,
Throughout history, I've learned that vaccines trigger all kinds of autoimmunes. It's a thing. But the fact that it was triggering this particular disease was pretty rare. Um, and so the only way to diagnose it is a spinal tap. And I had this inner knowing again. Again, I'm very spiritual. I feel like I'm very connected. So I knew when my toes were numb, the very first thought that hit my mind, besides, is this going to hamper me walking? Because your big toes are part of your balance. I was a little scared to walk. And the next thing that hit my mind was, this is GBS. I just knew it. So I called the primary care on Teledoc and I said, my big toe's numb. We already have this not eating thing problem. And, GBS causes your stomach digestion to slow down because it is a paralysis thing.
Right.
And he's like, you do not have GBS. I said, I think I do. Please schedule me because you have to have a referral to get a spinal tap.
Right.
I said, please schedule me a spinal tap. And he said, Carla, it is not GBS. You do not need a spinal tap. Continue with the brat diet. Everything's going to be fine. I'm not ordering a spinal tap. I'm like, oh, well, he is the doctor. At this point, I'm not feeling like he's absolutely wrong. So the following week, and we're seeing other doctors in between this, the following week, my first finger and my thumbs on both hands go numb. Just 2 fingers on each hand go completely numb. So I tell a doc, I get his PA. I said, I think I got GBS. I think I need a spinal tap. Can you get me a spinal tap ordered? He said, I'm going to have to get the doc. So we had the doc call me back. I think you might have heard that call. Was that the call you heard?
I think so.
The second call? Because I was bawling on the third call. But the second call, and he said no again. He said, it is not, you've been 2 months since your shot. It is not from the shot. It is not GBS. It is super rare. That is not what you have. You do not need a spinal tap. Now, at this point, I'm like, well, what difference does it make? It's no skin off his ass.
Exactly.
If I go have a spinal tap, like I have insurance. Like I just couldn't understand why he wouldn't. If I was a doctor, I'd rule it out just to shut somebody up because that's just how I operate. I'm like, why didn't he just want to do it and shut me up? So then about a week later, you could almost set your watch by it. Then a week later, my entire foot from my ankles down, both feet goes numb. And so we figured that out because I was walking to the front door to get what else? An Amazon package.
Talking.
And I fall, I go down. And I remember looking down the hall and you and Tim were sitting having food at the dining room table.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of blurry on what happened next. I think it's good if you take the story over from here.
Well, I think it was lunchtime. He and I were eating lunch, or a late breakfast. I can't remember. And where I was seated were some, how when you have a dining room table set up, you always sit in the same spot. I don't know why. But I always sat where I was facing towards the front of the house, and I could see down this hallway to the front door. And he was sitting to my right. And I remember watching you, your gait had changed because your foot had gone numb or feet had gone numb. So I was watching you walk and probably making some snide comment about your new balance issues. And I watched you go down the hallway. And again, I felt like I was always keeping an eye on you. It was almost like obsessive and weird, but I'm like, I have to just make sure she's fine. So I remember sitting there eating, and you're going down the hallway, and you open the door, you step outside, and you bend down to pick up whatever it is, and you just keep going. Like there was no bounce, but there was like no wobble. It was just like, boom. And I remember it must have been breakfast because I remember I had a spoon. I remember I was like mid bite, and I'm like, isn't that right? And like it took me a minute to react, and I was like, "Oh, dang, she's down." And Tim was the same way. He was like, "What? What just happened?" So I hop up and I go running down the hallway, step outside, and I ask if you're okay, and you weren't shaken, you weren't upset, you were just, I think, confused like me. So I was like, "Okay, let me help you up." And I
I was
laughed
really
because,
glad. I thought to myself, I'm really glad that I kind of bounced because even though at that point I had lost almost 70 pounds,
yeah.
I still had a little bit of fluff in the trunk. So I bounced a little bit. And I remember thinking, oh, I'm glad I bounced. But I was very, what just happened kind of thing.
Mhm. Yeah. And my first thought is I need to get her up and inside. So I remember coming behind you and like wrapping my arms from behind you and going to pull you up. And I was like, why is she so heavy? She's lost all this weight. I'm a strong guy. I should be able to pick her up. And you start laughing
I do, because
because
you jerked me once, then a second time, then a third time, and I can't tell you because I'm laughing, but then I say, you're on my hands.
I
Your
was,
big size 16 shoes are standing on both my hands.
yeah. So it's like pulling you, but keeping you planted. And of course, I mean, maybe it was a good thing your fingers were numb at that point. Hurt you a little bit less. So I start laughing. I'm just like, well, Lesbian, move your hands. I can't. Your feet are on them. So we get you situated, pull you inside. I think he came out and grabbed the package while I was kind of maneuvering you in. Probably took you to the couch because that was the closest place to go,
Yeah.
probably. Um, and then I remember where I was like, what happened? Do you remember that conversation at all?
No, no.
What I remember, and again, this has been a few years now, I just remember you saying, I just remember bending down and nothing would bring me back up. I just didn't have the strength to bring myself back up. That's kind of how you explained it. Like almost like things, your brain, I think this was the first time you said my brain was telling my legs to do something and they wouldn't listen to me.
Mhm.
Yeah, which is
And I
what
couldn't
you said a lot.
feel when you can't feel your feet, it's the weirdest thing because you don't know where to put them to get your balance to maneuver whatever you're going to do. It is
Hmm.
super, super weird. If nobody's experienced it, maybe it's kind of like when your feet go to sleep, if you're got your legs crossed or watching a movie and your feet go to sleep.
Hmm.
If you ever stand up and try to walk, you kind of can't navigate. Not only is it painful, but it's numb, but you can't feel it, but you can't navigate. Weird combination. Very
Absolutely.
weird.
Yeah.
Very
And
weird.
then, and at that point, you did not have any walking assistance. I think you were just kind of using walls at that point, right? You didn't have a cane or anything like that yet.
Yeah, I think we immediately ordered the cane, which was blinged out, purple, foldable, and had a flashlight on it. Loved it. I
I
wish
love
I
cane.
still had it, to be truthful.
I
I
remember
loved it.
showing up and I'm like, are you going to go mining? What is this all for? What is, of course.
And I got compliments everywhere on it, though. They're
Yes.
like, that is the cutest cane.
Um, and again, a bright spot and some very crazy stuff because things did not get better for you. Things kept getting more numb, still no answers, more phone calls to doctors where you just couldn't get what you needed to get your diagnosis. Um, Talk about that third phone call with your primary.
So I call him and he gets on the phone and I'm just crying. The second he comes on camera, I'm crying. And I'm not kidding you. I was literally begging for him to send me for a spinal tap. And it was still a no. It's not necessary. Maybe I can send you for some more blood work and we'll figure it out. And I'm like, what are you going to run that this immunologist, they ran panels and panels and panels. Like, what are you going to run that hasn't already been done? And he's like, I'll just run some cultures and some other things and we'll figure out. And I'm like, well, what do you think it is? Well, I don't have any idea. And at this point, he was almost annoyed with me. And I'm like, this is the person that's supposed to be heading my healthcare. They're
Mhm.
supposed to be putting me off in other directions, and this is just not happening.
Right.
Like, I just don't know what to do. And then uh decided to be my own advocate, did some research, remember? And I'm like, okay, we're going to see another rheumatologist and I'll see if they'll order a spinal tap. Remember that?
I do.
So we go see a rheumatologist. She was wonderful. She wasn't the rheumatologist I wound up using because I got assigned somebody. It's a whole thing to keep it all under one roof, which is super, super handy when you have something as serious as what I had, that all the doctors are under the same roof, can look at the same records, can know what's happened. They work with each other. It's very important. So went to see her and she's like, you need a spinal tap. Remember?
Yes. We're like, duh.
She said, I think it may be GBS. She said, I think you need a spinal tap. And I don't think I had said GBS to her before she said it, had I?
That I don't remember.
So, and I was supposed to have the spinal tap in like 4 days, right?
Yeah, it was on the schedule.
Oh, shoot, we missed stuff. Some other stuff happened before the rheumatologist. So the next, did the bathtub or the hallway happen first? Do you
Bathtub was
remember?
first.
Okay. So I'm taking a bath one night, not realizing I can't get myself out of the tub. So I had to holler at you to come get me out of the tub.
Hmm.
Go ahead. Tell them your experience. I'm so sorry.
If you've ever had to pick up a soaking wet lesbian naked out of a tub, it is one of the hardest workouts you will ever have in your life, for one.
Oh,
I
it had to be
remember,
than a grease pig. It had to be. Oh,
well, and I think I said this phrase a lot when you would call me in for stuff. I'd be just like, are you kidding? I think I said that when you're like, I need your help to get out of this bathtub. And you had like pulled a towel like over your chest and other stuff, I guess. I didn't look that closely. And oh, you had pulled the curtain and then you had pulled the stuff over your towel over your chest and said, I don't think I can get out of this tub. And that's when I said, are you kidding? And you're like, no, I need help. And I remember sitting there going, you know that meme where the woman is like in deep thought and all those math quizzes are going around her head? That's like kind of where I was like, okay, if I do this and the torque is this and the grip is this, okay.
oh,
Because it's hard to get somebody out of a tub. You're bending over, you're not square. Um, I don't even remember exactly how I did it. I think I did what I did outside without standing on your hands. I was able to kind of get under your arms and get you up. And the whole time, I don't know how much of this you remember. The whole time you're like holding the towel. I'm just like, just drop the towel. I don't care.
I
Just,
remember that.
just
I
hang on
remember.
to me. Just try to keep your stuff.
Do you remember when you first came in the bathroom? My idea was this is how I didn't understand my limitations, or I wouldn't have gotten the tub in the first place.
Hmm.
Seriously independent. I just stuck my arm out of the curtain thinking you were just going to grab my arm. I just needed a little bit of assistance to get
Yeah.
out. Yeah, that was not happening. Could not get my feet under me. Was not happening.
No. And like you said, you were a wet lesbian in a tub and not easy to grip. So eventually we came up with the plan of instead of me getting you to stand up, getting you high enough so that we could swing you and put your butt on the side of the tub. And and the whole time I'm just like, hang on to me if you can, because just we don't need you going backwards. We don't need all this stuff to happen. And that was one of the hardest lifts I think I've ever done, just because of I mean, I'm standing where it's dry, leaning over to try to get underneath you to try to get you to where you're going, which we did it, thankfully. And I just remember when I felt your butt supporting your weight again, I was just like, thank God, because I was I could do that again.
That's a
Um,
weird angle to try to get,
yeah.
it's
And then it
rough.
was, then you're like, I think I'm okay. I'm just like, no, we need to get you spun around so your feet are on the ground, not in the tub. So it was like a whole thing then to get you back to your bedroom.
Yeah. I remember us being uh first we giggled, then we were serious, and then we were dying laughing again after. That's what I
Yeah.
remember.
Because
I
I just kept
remember
saying, I'm like, man, I've seen some things.
you would tell all our friends, man, I've seen some things, and then they would all laugh. We would a lot of this stuff got revisited multiple times, especially you standing on my hands. I don't know how many times we have told that joke, and it's funny every single time.
Well,
Um,
I think this goes back to the trust we had in each other too, to be able to do this. You to trust me that I would pick you up and not drop you, even though I know you were terrified that that was a real possibility. And me having the trust in you to one, this isn't a prank, this is a real thing. And two, that you would listen to me so that we could work together to get you to where you needed to go. And that's something we learned moving forward from this with the help of our occupational therapist friends and physical therapist friends, which we'll talk about later about how we needed to communicate to do all this, because most of this was just like, oh, Steve is just going to use brute force to make stuff happen. That's not how this works. We had to learn to kind of work together. And yeah, we can look back and laugh at it, but who wants to be in a tub and have to ask anybody for help to get out? Nobody.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and the fact that I feel so safe with you took a lot of the embarrassment away. I mean, there was a smidge of it, nothing compared to what we're going to get into in the hospital, but there was a smidge, of embarrassment involved in that. And something you just said that I didn't even realize that I learned through this process till we're re-talking it. I really did have to learn. I have always been so fiercely independent, and I've always been margin charge. I run my company, I run other companies, I run big venues. I've always been in charge.
Hmm.
And I wasn't in I wasn't in charge. And not only that, but I had to be like, okay, somebody tell me the best way to do this instead of me going, get out of my way. I know the best way to do this. So
Hmm.
it really adjusted my attitude in the best of ways. So
Yeah.
again, for something to be bad, there was good things that came out of it. And I really try to lean into that every time, something good would happen. Like that, I remember thinking, hallelujah, I was in this house. Hallelujah, I was here and wasn't
Right.
stuck in my bathtub with
Right.
no phone, no nothing, no way to, get to anybody to whatever.
Right.
Um, so I was just thankful. I had gotten stuck in the tub. I was naked, a smidge embarrassed, but I was still thankful in that moment. And I think those moments, they just give you wings. That when you're grateful, when you're thankful, when you get in that mindset, it kind of gets up under you and it gives you some lift when it's terrible. I think I remember when I fell in the doorway, didn't I say something like, good thing I bounced and I didn't break anything?
Hmm.
Like because I was half on a step, half off. I could have broken my hip, my tailbone, my ankles.
Right.
I'm really damn fortunate nothing is broken.
Yeah. I'm
Like,
I'm trying to think when you called me into the bathtub, if thankful was the first thing that went through my head, and probably not. But now that I look back, yes, I was thankful that you were there and I could take care of you because, like you said, what if you didn't have, you were at your old place and you didn't have your phone? You would have been there for who knows how long. So thankful for that. And then as we kind of wrap up this part of our conversation before we get to the next big events of our life, um, there was kind of a moment in that hallway outside of the bathroom that really kind of changed the projection of this whole story for us both, I think.
yeah, and I believe, if I remember correctly, it was like 2 or 3 days before we went to the new rheumatologist who said, let's do a spinal tap, right?
Hmm.
And I had went to the bathroom. I believe I was on a cane at this point. It's the only
Yes.
way I could get around. And I was heavily, like my hands were bruised, like being on the cane. Um, and I believe by then the palms of my hands had gone numb, right?
Yes.
So I was bruising and not even know I'm bruising and all these things. And I had used the bathroom and I was coming out of the bathroom and I was being careful and I was leaning on a cane and I crashed again. And I crashed hard, hard right outside the weight room. And I just began to bawl when that happened. And you come rushing in, of course. Like, what happened? What happened? And I can't say anything and I'm crying and you're leaning down. You kind of get on the floor with me. It's what I remember. And I'm like, this is it. I'm done. I said, I can't put you through this. I said, you need to put me in a home. I said, this is not fair to you. We got to be somewhere I can get medical help. Like, we can't do this. You remember that?
I remember it very, very clearly. And at this point, I was sitting on the floor with you having this conversation because at first I was standing over you and I'm like, she's not ready for me to pick her up yet. And I could tell that you had had a moment that we needed to talk. This was like, all joking aside, this is a serious moment. And I remember you saying that very, very clearly. And Looking back at it, I can make all the jokes I want about putting you in a home, putting you in a kennel, whatever I want to do. But that was such a serious moment.
Yeah.
As somebody who's dead inside, I got emotional at that point. I remember very clearly.
Yeah, 30 years. And I want to say that's the only time, maybe when your mom, I think that's about the only time I saw you cry. Like, it's just not something you do. Me, we know, like, I'm the queen of the waterworks. I'm a Cancer, so I'm a water sign. That's how it comes out, people. It's how I process my emotions.
We'll go with
Uh,
that.
but yeah, we were both hanging on to each other, and I remember both of us crying, and it was, I'll never forget that.
Me neither. And it's blurry because it was such an emotional thing. I don't remember exactly what was said, but I do know it was decided. Somehow I conveyed to you that that is not where we are. We need to find the right people to help us, yes, but putting you in some home is not the answer to this. We just have to kind of figure out what that answer is. We're comforting each other. I appreciated you understanding that it was not easy for me to be taking care of you, but I also understood how hard it was for you, one, being as independent as you are, and at the same time losing your own faculties, essentially. So there was like a bunch of emotion in this bubble in this little tiny hallway we were sitting in.
Yeah, we were jammed in. I don't even know how you got your legs in there. I still don't understand how you were able to get your 9 foot self set down in that space, you know. But I do remember we know each other so well. We know how to pull each other out of stuff emotionally, mentally, psychologically. And I remember you said the thing about we're going to figure this out. We don't know yet, but we are going to figure it out. And I remember you saying, my gut's just telling me, because I work on gut instinct. So you knew I'd listen right away to that. And you said, my gut is telling me this next doctor, this rheumatologist, she's going to be the answer. We just got to get there. We're a couple days away. We just got to get there. And I'm like, okay. But if she doesn't have an answer, you remember that? I
Hmm.
said, if she doesn't have an answer, then we're going to figure something else out. And you're like, we'll see. And I'm like, no, we won't see. It's going to, and you're like, why are you arguing with me, lesbian? You can't get up off the floor. You're out of choices. You must agree for me to be able to pick you up off the floor. So are we in agreement? And I'm like, oh my God, I've lost control of my life. Remember that? And we were dying laughing. We went from literally bawling our eyes out in probably the most serious moment, because we joke all the time. We don't get real serious very often. And the most serious moment of our friendship, then we're busting out laughing 10 minutes later. I'm like, we need our own sitcom for real. Whoever's out there listening, we need a sitcom.
Well, and it's funny I forgot about that part because I remember now realizing like, holy crap, I'm finally in charge. It's been 30 years. I'm the one in,
I remember being terrified.
how did this happen? I'm the one who gets to make some decisions.
I was,
Joking,
I
of
lost,
course.
I lost control of my life. I really can't make these decisions. He's got a point here.
Yeah. Or you have to be on, there has to be a discussion about the decisions about your life. It's how I always tried to approach it. Because, of course, it's your life. You got to do what you got to do. But it's kind of like, I know you want help, so I can help you. And I had to keep you in that mindset of wanting the help, of wanting the assistance and be willing to accept the assistance. Because as we always know, you can't help someone who won't help themselves. And you came close to that, but you never crossed that line. And that's the closest I think you got to it now.
Yeah, I knew I still needed help. I just didn't think, I thought it needed to be a medical facility. I
Right.
didn't, at my house before I moved in with you, I'm like, if this stays the same, I'm going to end it. But I felt so much relief being in the house with you, that thought never came again.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. They couldn't figure it out. When I was in the house with you, I felt safe. And then my next thing was I would go to a medical facility and they could help me manage, because at that point, some of the overarching hyperimmune response had slowed. And the reason it had slowed because it was attacking other parts of my body. Now it was attacking my membranes and my nervous system.
Right.
So that's where it was headed instead of attacking my immune system. So my immune system had calmed down, so I wasn't having the constant panic attack. That was the stage in which I was like, this is no quality of life. I
Right.
won't live like this.
And, so we had two big falls, one at the front door, one in the hallway that was super emotional. And as we kind of wrap up, because we're getting close to our time limit here, I want to talk about the event that made us decide, okay, this is it. We're going to the ER. And I think I said, and we're not coming home till we get an answer. Do you remember what happened that day and what triggered that?
I do. I was sitting on the couch, and you come around the corner from the kitchen, and I wish I could remember what you said, but you were razzing me, saying something smart ass and sarcastic, walking towards me. You may have been bringing me something to drink, I think. I think you might have had a can of ginger ale that was unopened, maybe.
Okay.
But you were walking towards me, and then I went to go stand up and say something smart ass back, and I had no legs. I was numb from my boobs to my toes. I was literally legless, and realized a few minutes later from my elbows to my fingertips, I was also numb and paralyzed. And you actually caught me, and you're like, lesbian, you okay? And I said, my legs are gone. I'm
Well,
paralyzed.
and correct me if I'm wrong, but this wasn't just like oh, I caught you. I'm going to set you down. Like you like fell onto me and we like both kind of went onto the couch. Like it was like something out of the WWE for a
Yeah,
second.
I fell forward, and just like I was almost like fell into you before you knew what was happening. But then you grabbed a hold of me, and rather than both of us hitting the floor, you turned a little bit to the right. I didn't know you were that quick. It was impressive. And then you fell to the couch right there because it was an L shaped couch.
Right,
And so
6 feet.
you fell on that piece, and you're like, then you're looking at me. I'm on top of you, and you're like,
You're on
let's
top of me, your knees are on the floor, totally inappropriate position for best friends to be in at that moment. And I was
yeah.
like, what happened? And then that's when you said, I have no legs.
Yeah. I said, I have no legs. I'm paralyzed. And I
Yeah.
said, I think my arms too. And then we were messing with my arms. And you're like, okay, okay. I think you said okay like 5 times because your brain was processing. And you're like, I don't know what to do. I'm going to need help or whatever. Um, and I said, let's call Tim. He's the closest. And we'll leave it at that. Hopefully, we can get him on the next episode.
And this Tim is different than my husband now, Tim. It's Tim is a mutual
Correct.
friend of ours.
Correct.
Um,
A friend of 15 years of mine, Tim, is the Tim I'm talking about. Before we go, I want to ask you something.
okay.
So, when I had collapsed, what went through your mind? My mind was like, this is it. We gotta get somewhere, and I think you were in problem solving mode though at that.
You mean when we just talked about when you stood up from the couch and then we did our
Yeah.
dive? I think you said I said okay 5 or 6 times. I do think I was in problem solving mode of going like, okay, this can't go on. Something has got to change. We've been so patient. We've been waiting. We need to be the cause of the next action, whatever that is. And the only solution I could come up with and that we could come up with was like, let's go to the ER. Let's go take you somewhere and try to get some answers, which of course proved to be his own challenge. But um, I think at that point I realized that there's nothing I can do for you here. If you can't get up and walk to your room, I can't carry you through the house. This I saw no way moving forward the way we had been doing things. So I think that's why, other than the shock and oh no, the ginger ale or whatever it might have been, um, which who knows where that even went. I think that's where I was, like you said, problem solving mode. We need to take a drastic step forward in order to figure this out, which we did. And fear. I was terrified. I'm like, I don't know. What do you say to somebody who suddenly tells you, I am numb from my chest to my feet and my arms? What? Oh, you'll be okay. No, that's not how this works.
Right.
So I was also like, how am I going to offer encouragement in this situation when I have no words of encouragement? My way of encouraging you and us is to say, we're taking action. We're going to go to the ER. That's all I remember. Yeah.
That's where we end today. That was a lot. Yeah, it's
Tragic and
emotional
crazy.
to revisit the bad, but it also is very uplifting and re-inspires me. And I really hope it inspires other people, but it most certainly re-inspires me to revisit the good things that were mixed in with this.
Yeah.
It just reaffirms, I've lived a good life kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
Well, we hope you guys listening to this or watching this enjoyed hearing the story. Share us your comments, your thoughts, all that good stuff. We're going to keep doing this, sharing the story. We've got a long way to go. Um, and remember, stay positive. That's the key thing. And as Carla always says, make sure you have your tribe. Carla, any last words? Are you good to go?
no, thanks for coming on this journey with us. We appreciate you being here with us.
Absolutely. Until next time, everybody. I'll talk to you soon, lesbian. I love your hair. Hope you win.
Talk to you later. Bye.